All right, Ray, first easy question. How long have you been an athletic trainer?
I've been an athletic trainer for about 32, 33 years now. So, and then also, I'm also an EMT. Yeah, and also a licensed a nationally certified EMT. So I did that back in the 90s. Obviously hard to do continuing education, which both of us at the time early on. And I went back and got my credential back in 2019. So, and don't regret it one bit. It's a really nice addition.
Fantastic. Tell me the different places you've been an athletic trainer in your life.
Well, that's a good, that's a good, maybe too long of a question, but I did my formal initial training at LSU, finished in 90, went to grad school at Southern Miss, University of Mississippi in Hattiesburg, also worked as assistant athletic trainer there. After my master's, worked in outreach in Southwest Louisiana, have been in college at USL, or now at University of Louisiana Lafayette for several years. Went back and got my PhD at Southern Miss. Then from there went to University of West Florida, where I was program director, and then there for 2 years. And I was at LSU for 20 years, from 2002 to 2022, as program director and professor for athletic training. I've also done work in high school settings on the side. I did that for about 6 years, working at a high school here in the early and mid 2000s, and I've also had the opportunity to do some other different types of events with U.S. Olympic Committee, travel with them some on some events, Pan Am Games, etc. Traveled with bobsled for a short stint with them. So go figure, somebody from South Louisiana and ice. So that's interesting, to have that there. So I've done that, done other events now with my company now, and been in middle of year 12, 11, 12. So we've do a number of events right now. I do large scale event coverage. We do medical coordination for across 4 states, different events, do a lot of races, marathons, half marathons, triathlons. That's one of the bigger events we do around the South. So among other events. So get to do a lot of different things, which has been fun. So
yeah, you certainly have had a decorated career there, no doubt about it. And right now it's all around action medicine consultants. Tell me why you started it, I guess.
Well, that's how I started. Actually, was I'd been getting several years when I was here. Now it had been about 10 years when I was at LSU. We kept getting calls, people needing coverage for different events, and where it really kind of took the turn by the movie industry was big in Louisiana in the early to middle 2000s, and we had a former athlete here, Michael Papajohn, who has been his actor. He did this Action Actor Studio and was giving some scholarships to former letter winners at LSU. Was the one through being an athletic training student, and I applied. And I just my thought was, why not bring sports medicine, that mindset, to the stunt actor world. A lot of injuries, no difference in athletics, trying to keep them. One thing led to another. Just started to went through that workshop, and when I mentioned that, it kind of turned heads. Like, that's kind of interesting concept. A couple months later, I met with the director of the large studio here, Celtic Media Center, which has a number of different stages here in Baton Rouge. And so nice idea, great idea, but wasn't really sure how to integrate it. So I was trying to think about licensing and the different things with laws and stuff with how it applied. About a month and a half later, I get a phone call from an executive assistant of the production company. It was Oblivion Productions, and they're like, "Hey, we're trying to find something for actors, and we're coming in for a big set, whatever." They didn't get much into it. So about a couple weeks later, I met with the executive producer, and I walk in, and there's a headshots of Oblivion, which was Morgan Freeman and Tom Cruise, and I'm like, okay, well, we're out of Kansas now. This is really different. Did not get that, but I was walking out. Didn't get the opportunity to do anything with them, but as I walked out, the assistant I'd worked with says, "You really ought to start your company." So in spring of 2012, I left that meeting, came right here, started Action Medicine Consultants. So did not do the movie industry just because of licensing and laws as there were back then, but I am started doing event coverage, and it's just kind of grown from there organically. So
That's so interesting. And it sounds like it's a really diverse company because you cover different events. It's very diverse. But what I kind of want to get at is the philosophy that you have from different event to different event. It's so fascinating. Tell us about it.
well, I just think the philosophy is more on, you look at an event as an event. It's not, if it's a large scale event or even a high school practice or whatever it may be, it still has the same components. It still looks the same. It may not have the same resources, but you have to do the same. You have to put the same steps in place. Looking at what is your communication plan? Is your equipment check? The little things like that. Like when I do work in an event with my company, I have everybody go through one of the first things they do is they're going to go through. They have a check. We have a checklist, and with that being the AEDs. And they turn them on. They make sure the pads are not expired. Make sure it's fully functional, but also making sure if someone hasn't used the device before, it's nobody new to my company, then they know how to use that already. And then we go through rehearsal, walk through basically the medical timeout for our medical operations. Then we go through in a bigger event. I can do that for the other operation staff as well. So depending on the size of the event, so the same thing applies regardless for that. So be prepared for anything any given time.
Yeah, and putting the right people in the right spots is kind of something that you had told me too. Is just making sure that you've whatever they're good at, that's where you want them to be. It's just making sure you've got the people at the right spots, right?
Yeah, I mean, I do enough for large scale events where I have different, like they'll come in and be volunteers, or I have, from EMS, and I have to merge in with EMS. These are large scale events. So whether it's a volleyball tournament or it could be a race, which is creates more the dynamic side of it, that it is just a simple thought process of instead of saying, oh, you're this person and you put somebody in a box, we work with them. I'm like, yes, okay, but what are you really good at? And for example, I'm gonna give an example of a nurse. They may work our main medical tent for the Louisiana Marathon, and they do those and they do it well. But I could put them on the finish line, but they may not work in that environment all the time. Versus an athletic trainer or EMS does, who's a forward front, a first responder role. We're accustomed to being in that area. When I can, I put them up there, but in the medical tent, their skill set may be in being able to perform IVs and doing other stuff in that setting. So, versus I may not put an athletic trainer there if they don't have that skill set, because that's what I need that person to be. I have to be, working with a physician doing EMS, doing like an IV. Versus, we have somebody having heat stroke. We have that deployed out to who people and train those folks individually as well. So just depends on the setting and what their physician or medical direction is. What they can and cannot do is where you really want to put them into places to be successful. But it also goes with equipment as well. So whether you're at a school, high school, et cetera, you have to have the necessary equipment to be successful. If you don't have that, no matter what you do, you're going to have probably a poor outcome, just like having an AED. If you don't have an AED there, the outcomes, even if you do CPR immediately, is still, have a very slim success rate. So those are some little things like that to think about.
Yeah, let's talk about EAPs because and let's talk about just maybe some CEUs that are the biggest bang for your buck. I think you might be a little biased, but let's talk about those.
Well, when I started doing the CEU court, like the online webinars back in the spring with my company. One of the things we took more of an approach on is it's not this and this. It's really like, what are gaps in this? Where are people losing? I did one, and I also had, for example, had at the symposium we did back in the spring is what are the gaps? It could be like we did the Next Witness Please series. So I started doing that back in this kind of an old video series that started back in the late 80s, early 90s. There was an actual mock lawsuit that was done for athletic trainers. And I want to revitalize that whole concept. So we did one's a mock trial back in the spring. That's Next Witness Please. I've got another one coming up that will be actually a deposition that we'll be doing in November. And then also, but from a presentation standpoint, like what are EAP gaps in heat-related illnesses or cardiac arrest? And this is really what the fail points are, and what it means to have a successful EAP. But that one condition is high profile, for example, cardiac arrest, but the same thing applies for any type of condition. You've got to have those things. You have training, and it goes down to training and communications and what are your skill and what personnel and equipment you have there. Those are the big things I've seen in lawsuits, that if you address those three, two or three couple of things, then everything else it becomes just really, it takes care of itself. And that involves even like coaches training and CPR. And you see that in a number of cases across the country where it doesn't have to be a provider there. It could be a coach. There was a volleyball player, I can't recall the name. She had a cardiac arrest on the court, and it was the athletic trainers were there, but it was administrators as well who were trained in that. And the administrator was making the call. And while the health, are working with it's the communication side. So getting AED, applying the AED, et cetera. So things like that are really critical to the overall process.
Awesome. I'm going to ask you some quick fire questions now, things that athletic trainers were asking all across the country. Number one, did you play a sport that you loved back when you were in school?
Well, I grew up in a small town, so we did everything. Probably I like I like football, but really like coverage wise, I like football. I grew up playing football. That was probably my one thing. But I played basketball. I like that's the one sport I really kind of more have an affinity for. Is probably football. Wasn't probably better at that than other sports. I couldn't really jump, and I couldn't really run far, so that cut out cross country. So that's with that. So I'd say probably football, but now pickleball is probably would be my go-to sport. So
very nice. Yes, that is a growing popular sport, no doubt about it, all across the country. All right, so question, either or. Do you prefer to squirt the water inside the athlete's mouth, or do you just prefer that they take the bottle on their own?
Either one. They can do it themselves, or either one. Most of them will take it themselves. So I don't see the reason why. Either one. So whatever floats your boat. So
that's the perfect answer right there. All right. So when it comes to NATA, you've been to several NATAs before, right? NATA. I've
been to. My first meeting was in 1991 NATA when I just came out of school. So I have only missed one since then. So it was a 92 meeting and went to Denver, but other than that, I've been fortunate to go to every one. So that's 30 I guess in a row, I guess. And of course New Orleans coming this year, so it'll be right in the backyard. So it's kind of a no-brainer. So.
Oh, that's a perfect person to ask then. What has been your favorite location for NATA?
Well, I'm biased, but New Orleans is really good. I think it's kind of funny because I'm wearing a suit and it's kind of hot, and everybody else comes in. You think they've gone to the scorched earth. Don't get me wrong, it's pretty hot in New York. It can get hot. So with that, I don't know. It's they've both been. We had Orlando one year was a lot of fun. Obviously, going to I've been to Baltimore. That's been a fun meeting. But St. Louis has been there several times. I just like that's a neat city as well. So it's not so much about the city as much as it is just the opportunity to get back, connect with colleagues. I think especially after COVID, when we had the meeting right after COVID, or at least this first meeting, that in Philadelphia, that was a pretty cool meeting. It was just like you see people, but you really hadn't seen people in a while, and it was just a different vibe for that meeting. I think for different reasons. So we're just glad to get back and doing physical, in-person meetings. Like you can hug somebody, you can give somebody a high five. If they were obviously using precautions back in that time, but also just trying to make that three-dimensional connection versus like we do in Zoom meetings or things like that as well.
I can't wait to give you a high five, shake your hand in New Orleans next year. It's definitely my favorite NATA that I've been to as well. So thanks for your time today, Ray, and I can't wait to meet you up in New Orleans here, not too far away.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. We have good food, and that's and we always have good weather there. So looking forward to it being back here and meeting you all again as well.